Welcome back to the Christian Bitcoin podcast. Today, I am joined by Dan Sherman. He is the co-author of The Gospel According to Bitcoin. We've got a little bit of an interesting format here. We already interviewed Jordan Bush, the other author of this book, and we had a great conversation. And so now we're going to kind of run through the same questions with Dan to get his take on it. Dan, if you could give our listeners a little background on yourself and what you're doing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim. It's such a pleasure to be on your podcast. I'm a big fan of what you and Tim have been putting together here over the last couple of years. My name's Dan. I live in near Toronto in Canada, and got a wife and 3 kids. And my day job is working with Power to Change. Power to Change Students Ministries is Crew, but for Canada. And so I get to serve as the National Field Strategy Director, which means I oversee all of our in-person campus ministries across our country. And so, just yesterday I was down at a university. A couple of weeks ago, I was on the other side of the country visiting a university and get to see how students are living out their faith in Christ on their campuses in a very secular environment. And so get to help bring leadership to, we have about 100 staff within my section of the organization that I provide leadership to. And thankful to be doing that. But then, as you know, really into Bitcoin. I'm part of a couple different things. I'm on the board of Bitcoin is Better, run by a good friend, Daniel Hirschberger, and also part of Christian Bitcoin Consultants, run by my buddy Ryan. And so we help to provide services, provide consulting services to people who are from a Christian perspective, but want to learn about Bitcoin. So we've been trying to get that off the ground. It's a bit of a startup. So that's a bit about me. And then, I'm a longtime friend of Jordan's and a fan of Thank God for Bitcoin as well. And so I've been able to attend their conference in the past. And Jordan and I teamed up to write this book last year. And it's been published. It's been out for getting on a year. It'll be a year next month that we published it. And so we're really thankful for the fruit that is born, but haven't done too much on the promotion side. And so looking forward to just getting more out there, because it is a bit of a misleading title. Like it just says uninformative title. Like it just The Gospel According to Bitcoin, 21 Meditations. It doesn't really describe what it is. And so I'm thankful for these types of long form interviews where we can dive into what actually is this book all about and what are we trying to communicate through it. And so, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. It seems like the title is a bit of a controversial title to some people. We got into that a little bit when I was talking about it with Jordan. Could you give a little bit of sketch on sort of the origin story of how you guys wanted to write this book, or how that came about?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Thank God for Bitcoin, as you know, made big waves with their book, Thank God for Bitcoin, several years ago. I think they published in 2021. I remember reading it back then. And it's basically a way of orange pilling Christians. It's a way of helping Christians understand from a biblical lens what Bitcoin is and why it's useful, why we should adopt it. And so after talking with Jordan, he kind of discovered me through some of my YouTube videos from a few years ago. And he said, I got to work with this guy. And so he tapped me on the shoulder and said, what can we do together? And after kind of several months of getting to know each other better and chatting more, we decided, let's write the corollary book to this and help Jesus pill Bitcoiners. And so that's the heart behind it. It's a Jesus pill book for Bitcoiners, where if you understand Bitcoin already, but you're even if you're a Christian, this could be helpful for you. But especially if you're not a Christian, or if you just if you're maybe spiritually seeking and curious about what Christianity is all about, and you want to hear about it from a Bitcoiner, from Bitcoiners, and hear about it from a Bitcoin lens, this is the book for you. So that's what we tried to do. And just a bit, it is a real personal journty for me as well. I don't know if you're interested in kind of hearing some of my backstory.
Please.
But yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. So to kind of trace back a little bit. So my dad, he has this really unique job. where he worked for this organization called the Embassy Connections Canada. He works for, formerly known as Christian Embassy, or formerly a part of Christian Embassy, which is he's basically a missionary to what he calls the up and out of the world, at least in Canada. And so he is someone who is kind of like a resident chaplain at Parliament Hill here in Canada. And so, like I grew up in Ottawa, he ministers to members of Parliament. So he's had prayer with like Justin Trudeau, Stephen Harper, like all of our prime ministers. He's leads Bible studies with them. And then he also ministers to upper tier business leaders, and he ministers to foreign ambassadors, people who are representing their nation in Canada. And so this has been his job for like about 30 plus years. And so he's dedicated his life to reaching the world's current leaders. And so as I was kind of thinking about this, as I was diving into Bitcoin, I really saw, and I went down the rabbit hole of what Bitcoin is, I really saw that there's an opportunity here that the world is going to be converging on Bitcoin. And as that happens, the price is naturally going to go up. And as that happens, those who own Bitcoin are going to be incredibly wealthy and influential. And I looked at, my job, I'm part of an evangelistic organization. And so the natural question is, who's reaching these people? And what resources exist to reach these people? And I couldn't really think of any or point to any. So we thought, okay, let's write it. Let's be a part of that and actually write some of the resources that we can help reach Bitcoiners for Jesus. And I just thought, like, maybe this is a way of somewhat shadowing in my dad's footsteps, of him reaching current leaders and me reaching future leaders, the leaders that will come in the potential new world, whatever Bitcoin brings with it. But it will definitely bring, I think, some radical system change. And so that's some of the backstory of why it's so near and dear to my heart.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for all that context. So why don't we jump right in? I've got a few questions prepared. I took copious notes while I was reading the book. So
yes,
even though I read it, I read it several months ago, but I wanted to do my homework. So let's see, getting into the preface. You say it is a thought-provoking exploration of Christianity seen through the metaphor of Bitcoin. Can you unpack that a little bit more and then give us some context for how to read the book?
Yeah. Well, it's in the title, right? They're called meditations. So we don't call them chapters, we call them meditations, and that's very intentional. The hope is that people who pick up this book will read about one a day. It'll take them 10, 15 minutes to read it. Meant to be read slowly, meant to be read thoughtfully, because the goal of the book isn't to pack more information into your brain. It's to actually give you pause, give you a moment of reflection, and hopefully bring some kind of like heart change. The hope of the book is to reveal Jesus to people. And as you see Jesus, it's not you just like, okay, check, got it, move on to the next thing. Like I listen to all my podcasts on at least 1.5, if not 2 times speed. This is meant to be like a 1 speed or maybe a 0.5 speed. And so you're supposed to read through it thoughtfully, because you're learning about God through it. And this isn't scripture in any ways, but in some ways, when you're learning about God, you need to think about it. You need to pause and you need to reflect. And so something to be done with a bit of reverence. So that's how we're hoping people will approach the book.
So somewhere in between devotional and podcast.
Yeah, somewhere in between. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You say you've met many people who have experienced a spiritual revival after discovering Bitcoin. And that definitely lines up with our experience. Why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, it's a crazy phenomenon. I've seen many people on Twitter express this. A few Twitter handles come to mind of people who have expressed after they discovered Bitcoin, they are curious about Christianity, or they've started picking up their Bibles that they haven't read for like a decade. Why that is, you probably have as good a guess as I do, Jim, but I think we just take things for granted as humans. We think that we understand how the world works, and we think we're all set. And then every once in a while, something comes along that just utterly shifts everything. It brings a paradigm shift in our lives. And Bitcoin is one of those things. When you discover what Bitcoin is, you're not just discovering Bitcoin itself, but it unveils to you the errors of the fiat system. And it brings with it all kinds of ramifications. And this is why we have all these spin-offs of like, you think of like, was it Seyfedine, who is his brother, who wrote the book like Fiat Foods, and there's all kinds of like the way that Bitcoiners talk about this stuff, like, oh, that's fiat education, or that's a fiat food, or that's a like, it's these new awarenesses that people have because of the discovery of Bitcoin, of all these kind of like sinister plots within the subculture of the world. And so I think when people discover that, it begs the question, like, what else am I missing? Like, is there something else, like another paradigm that's awaiting me that I maybe haven't discovered yet? Things that I'm taking for granted. And I mean, what greater thing than the idea that we are created with a purpose and that God is real? And so I think it begs the question, and so people start thinking about it. I think also when you discover Bitcoin, you discover truth on a new level that you maybe didn't think could exist before. Like, Bitcoin is really the invention of digital scarcity, and it's something that's utterly transparent, that can't really be manipulated. And there'll only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. The difficulty adjustment isn't going to be changed. There's so many things about Bitcoin that are just kind of like etched in stone, but even stone can be broken, but Bitcoin can't be broken. And so when you kind of realize that there are things in this world that can be just utterly that firm as a source of truth, then you naturally wonder, like, are there other things too? Like maybe I've been missing out. Maybe this idea that truth is relative is the whole thing is wrong. And so I think it begs the question. But I'd be curious to know if do you have a perspective on that? Have you produced any podcasts with Tim on that one?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the truth piece. I don't think that Bitcoin is absolute truth. I think it's as close as we can possibly get from a created being trying to do that. Obviously, the creator has a definition and a standard for truth that nothing that is part of creation can hold a candle to. But yeah, and then the type of person that is sort of willing to admit that they've been lied to for a very long time about fundamental things. That's kind of the one thing about Bitcoin that's really hard for people to accept, is not Bitcoin itself, but more all of the other lies that they have to agree that have been perpetrated against them. And they can't, there's a cognitive dissonance there, right? Because you don't really want to admit that, because you can't admit that you've been lied to for decades and decades and decades without feeling pretty bad about it. So I think the kind of person that is willing to live with that fact can be closer to seeking the truth, seeking Jesus, seeking the Bible, and sort of being reconciled with their creator. Because, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? If you've been living in sin for decades and decades and decades, it's a pretty big piece of humble pie to swallow whenever you realize that there's no possible way that you can be reconciled with your creator without essentially just getting on your knees and begging for forgiveness and saying that there's nothing that you bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that word, you said humble, and I think that's like the key word, right? Like a lot of Bitcoiners talk about that Bitcoin isn't so much a knowledge test, but it's a humility test. That the first thing you need to discover about Bitcoin is that you were wrong about Bitcoin, that you've always been wrong about Bitcoin. Like when you first heard about it, when you dismissed it, like we all have that story, right? Dismissing it like years before we actually embraced it and recognized what it is for what it is. And the same thing has to happen with our knowledge of God. You have to eat that slice of humble pie and be like, oh man, like I am a sinner. God is real, and I need forgiveness.
100%. Okay, let's dive in. Let's get to meditation 1. So it's one meditation per chapter, right? So meditation 1, you say, the world needs Bitcoiners who will help to usher in a better world for our children and our children's children. So are you post-mill or optimistic ah-mill? And if so, do you think it's harder for pre-mill Christians to accept Bitcoin?
Yeah, this is a good question. I mean, the heart of this meditation was just to whet people's appetite for what's to come and to basically give a thesis for the book. And it really asks the question, like, who ought you to be in light of what's going to transpire over the next couple decades with Bitcoin potentially becoming the dominant money of the world, and you owning a significant slice of it as a Bitcoiner. If you own it at this stage, you own a significant slice. And so, like, what it's asking the question of, like, what kind of character should you have? To go to your question, I did a deep dive into Revelation back in my early 20s. I remember leading a Bible study of, like, young guys through it, and I probably landed more on the pre-mill side. I would at the same time, I would love to be post-mill, just because, like, oh, how amazing would it be to just trust that the world's going to get better and better, and then Jesus is going to return and it's all glitz and glory. But I just see so much of Scripture indicating that, like, things will get worse before they get better, and so I don't know. Maybe that just makes me a natural pessimist, but I probably lean on that side. That said, like, I have a lot of respect for people, regardless of what position they choose on this. And I haven't done probably a deep enough dive to really set my my theory on this in stone. Where do you land on this?
I think it's possible that technologies like Bitcoin could be a part of ushering in a post-mill, prosperity. I would
love that.
Yeah, I'm probably more on, like, the optimistic mill side of things. I grew up pre-mill. I grew up in a non-denom kind of evangelical pre-mill tradition. So I've got respect for all sides of the argument. I understand anybody can sort of cherry pick whatever verses they want to prove their points. But I tend to lean towards things like Bitcoin adding a few chips in favor of the argument for either the optimistic mill or the post-mill, which makes me feel good, kind of like you.
Yeah, I mean, it's playing out in real time, right? Like, we'll see what happens. I agree, and part of this, which I describe in the book, is that there's these. Well, Peter Thiel really outlines well in his preface to The Sovereign Individual, just this idea of AI competing with Bitcoin and crypto, and, like, basically one being a force for constraint and kind of take over a government panopticon kind of thing, and then the other is like a force for freedom, and so that these two things are kind of battling it out. And I mean,
well, we're gonna get there. I have some questions on that, so
sure,
don't
we'll
steal your own thunder.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, let's move on to meditation 2. I think this was one of Jordan's meditations, but I'll give you a chance to react to some of it if you want to. So you guys quote James Smith. He said, "Behind every pedagogy is a philosophical anthropology." What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, that's a word salad, right? And I believe Jordan lays it out in the book. This is a great chapter. It basically just means, like, the things that we use in everyday life that are, like, our daily practices and our habits, and, like, the things we use, even our money, they are an outflow of our view, as of our societal view of what it means to be human. And so our pedagogy is a result of our philosophical anthropology, what we believe to be like who we are as humans.
Great. And then later you say, so this is still a meditation too, fiat currency operates on a Darwinian, animalistic anthropology, whereas Bitcoin embodies a moral, dignified, and elevated view of humanity. Can you provide a little color on that one and maybe give an example so we can better understand?
Yeah. Basically what Fiat just says about us is that money is like an arbitrary thing that can be willed by whatever dominant humans are in the seat of power within a given power structure, that they can just kind of usher it into existence. And this is what Fiat does, right? It's like the central bank can just change a few numbers on a keyboard, and that changes the money supply. That has huge ramifications for everyone who uses that money. And so it basically, Jordan argues in this chapter that it almost puts like a sinful human in the seat of like God. It's like, I can manipulate the money supply. I can do this. And that is like one of the most powerful things anyone can do. I can't remember what that Rothschild quote is, or at least the quote that's attributed to the Rothschild. But he says something like, give me control of a nation's money supply and I care not who its leaders are, or something to that extent. And so, yeah, the control of money is very powerful. And yeah, fiat system elevates sinful people into the roles of these like mini gods who can basically arbitrarily create their own will. Whereas Bitcoin, being rooted in physics, being rooted in natural order, it actually says no. It says to us about. It presents a different philosophy. It presents the philosophy that we can't just arbitrarily create our own reality. It embodies the philosophy that there is a natural order to things, and that human flourishing is the result of actually surrendering and submitting ourselves to that natural order, to the laws of physics, to the laws of love and relationships. You could go into all kinds of, substructures of human interaction to see where we need to submit ourselves to natural order in order to best flourish and to have peace and joy and all those things. And so Bitcoin represents that side by being completely fixed, by being beyond people's grasp at manipulating and that kind of thing. Jordan could probably explain it better than I can, but that's essentially what it's trying to say.
Yeah, that's great. I've actually been reading this new book called Against the Machine. Have you heard of this book?
No.
It's by a man named Paul Kingsnorth, but he's picking up on a lot of the same kind of ideas where humans, in kind of a fiat mindset, we want to think that we can control everything. We can control the weather. We can control our gender. We can eventually create AI and upload our brains and control death. And it's all a lie. And, it's a lie that we sort of a carefully constructed narrative that we tell ourselves. And, at the end of the day, we all have to bend the knee to the fact that we are creatures and we are not the creator. So, okay, let's move on to meditation 3. You call fiat currency a monetary Tower of Babel. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's built off of one of the other quotes in the book that I think I first heard it from Robert Breedlove, where he talks about he is host of the What is Money show, and he has multiple definitions of what money is. But one of his best ones, I believe, is that money is the language of value, and if money is a language, then the language needs to be universal. Like it needs to be something that that we all agree on. Like that we all agree on the same terms. We all agree on the same definitions. Otherwise, the things you're saying, I'll interpret incorrectly, and vice versa. And so, if money is the language of value, then corrupt money distorts the way we interact with each other. It distorts the way we communicate to each other, but in monetary form. So think of like, and the examples that are given in the book, it lays out like several different, it gives the example of a few different types of currencies that have inflated away, like the Argentinian peso. I can't remember what the Lebanese, is it Lebanese pound? No. Anyways, Lebanese dollar, whatever that
pound,
is.
maybe.
Yeah. It goes into a few of these examples and shows like how the distortion of the money creates a distortion with how people, like businesses can't run because they don't know what their costs are. And like you can't even just go to a restaurant and order food because the menu changes on you throughout the course of the time you were seated there. And so there's just all kinds of weird distortions in this. And so, and then lastly, it points out the dollar, the US dollar, and how it has radically depreciated over the last 100 years. And especially during the COVID season, like it, am I allowed to say that? During the lockdown season, I don't know if you get the algorithm will change if I say that, but yeah, like 2021 period, there's like crazy high inflation, like it's almost hitting double digits. And so like you just see like this is if money is the language of value, then the money is distorted to the point where we can't communicate with each other, and that's where things start to break down. You think of like housing costs, you think of healthcare costs just skyrocketing, and so it's basically saying, it's a Tower of Babel moment. We're in a Tower of Babel moment, but it's in the money, not in our language, and then it goes on to say how the idea of Bitcoin fixes this, because it actually was like created by an intelligent designer with the purpose in mind, and I could go on with that about that, but I'll stop.
I mean, I'll play devil's advocate here a little bit. One could argue that, I mean, I understand what you're saying, where the outflow of the Tower of Babel after they got smoted was all the languages were confused, and that's what Fiat is.
Right.
But maybe Bitcoin represents the hubris before, sort of while they were building the Tower of Babel, and say, we all have one language and look how great we are. But the counterpoint to myself, now no longer playing devil's advocate, is I would argue that AI fits the bill more than Bitcoin does. You know, AI is very much centralized, created thing, whereas I'm not saying that Bitcoin's not a created thing, but it's not really in Satoshi's control anymore. It's sort of everybody's, as opposed to AI is very much, it's Meta's AI, or it's, you know, Google or Facebook or what, I don't even know what these companies, they rename themselves every 5 seconds, but you know, they have all their own AIs, right? And so, I think we're kind of hitting on this subject that we're going to get to, the Peter Thiel quote. So I won't steal your thunder, but we're approaching it. So let's continue the approach into meditation 4. This is a great quote from C.S. Lewis, The Weight of Glory. The quote, I'm going to read this quote. It's a little bit of a longer quote, but it's worth it. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. So obviously Bitcoin fits into the first category, or the ordinary things, but strangely it seems to cast a shadow that is closer to the second category, the immortal. Do you think this is part of the appeal of Bitcoin, and possibly why people even start to worship it or make it into a kind of religion?
Yeah, I love that quote as well. That's why I wanted to include it. And this, just so the audience knows, like the chapter structures or the meditation structures within the book, they kind of in this format. So they present a principle from nature or from Bitcoin that we kind of all agree on. And then they show the spiritual parallel as the ultimate form of that principle. And then the whole purpose of that, of showcasing the spiritual comparison, is to showcase Jesus and how beautiful he is, and how he's kind of either a contrast or a comparison to Bitcoin, or to like whatever kind of natural thing that we're talking about, whatever principle within Bitcoin we're kind of talking about. And so this quote comes from the idea of like viewing our lives on an exponential time scale, and it's really has to do with that question of like who ought we to be? And that's the dominant question behind a lot of this book. Who ought we to be as people? What should our character be? Especially if we're going to have these positions of extreme influence in the years to come. And so this is, I believe, the chapter entitled like a mustard seed. And so it's showcasing that Bitcoin starts small, but that it will grow into a behemoth, and that it already is growing into a financial behemoth. And so it's asking the question, like, what other things start small and then grow into behemoths? And so I love this quote because he uses that phrase that each person's going to either become an immortal horror or an everlasting splendor. And so it's like, you know, which way, modern man, do you choose? Will you become an immortal horror, or will you become an everlasting splendor? And the choices that we make today, and ultimately whether or not we surrender our lives to God and put our faith in Christ, will determine the type of person we're going to be, not just like a dozen years from now, but like a million years from now. And so it is very important to view yourself on the exponential timescale. I think I forgot your question in regards. As I was
No, that was great.
Saying that.
The question was, Do you think this is part of the appeal of Bitcoin in the sense, or like possibly why people start to worship it?
Yeah. Oh man. I always like shudder when I see, guys like Max Kaiser, and I don't know if he does this as much anymore. I've heard he's read this book, so maybe that will help him. But when he says like things like tweets things like Bitcoin is God, um, I at one point I can, in some sense, I can identify with him and I can relate. I like Bitcoin is so profound and so beautiful that I could see how someone could be tempted to worship it because of all these things we've already talked about. Because it,
like they think it is the truth.
yeah, like they take it one step further, like than what we're saying. We're saying like it really showcases it is a form of truth, but they're saying no, it is the truth, and that's where there's this definition where they're crossing an obvious line. And if you don't have God at the center of your worldview, if you don't have Him as your Lord, then I could see why someone would be tempted to put Bitcoin there. And I mean, it's to be honest, it's an argument in some sense for how great Bitcoin is. It's like, this is such a profound thing and such an amazing thing that some people are actually tempted to worship it, even though it's just this code that people are running online that shows like, it's like zeros and ones. And yet it has all these such profound implications for our lives and for our world that, yeah, it could be tempting to worship it. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you, obviously. There is only one God, and Bitcoin is not it.
Yeah. All right. I think that ties in perfectly to Meditation 5, where you admit that you are afraid that earthly forces could somehow overshadow God's sovereignty. But Bitcoin reminded you that God is at work behind the scenes. Are you saying that you think Bitcoin is part of God's plan to bring more equity and justice to the world?
You're going to try to convert me to optimistic Amil or post mill here. Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I hope so. Every day, like there's a thing called the Lindy effect, right? Like which is like things that are happening now and that are growing will probably be around. The longer that Bitcoin survives, the more likely it is to survive into the future. And so, I hope so. I hope that Bitcoin is something that can bring equity and justice when people can't manipulate the money supply. Oh my goodness, like it'll bring all kinds of amazing changes in our world where people actually have a way to store their hard-earned work and energy in something that doesn't get stolen from them and depreciated through inflation. And so, yeah, it gives them hope. And so I think it can have profound implications. I wrote this when I was particularly thinking of two things I was thinking of that really caused me stress in the world. This is like 2018, 2019. I was really stressed out about, I've been to China many times, and I was really stressed out about the mainland China encroaching on Hong Kong. This is when there was those massive Hong Kong riots. And I was like, oh man, like what's going on? Why doesn't China just leave them alone? Like let them be, like they have their freedom. And I just saw this encroaching system. And China had already been adopting this like AI panopticon type of style of governance, where you can just get you're recognized everywhere you go, and they've got their social credit system and whatnot. And I just thought this is really scary. And like, where's the hope in the world? Like, obviously, I had hope for beyond this world, like when Jesus returns, that He's gonna right every wrong. But I kept thinking, like, man, like this is dark. This is really dark. There's also some things happening in Canada at the time, which I won't get into, that were just discriminatory practices, especially towards believers and towards anyone who is pro-life, that was really disheartening as well. And so I just thought, man, like this encroachment by governments that are trying to push their evil agendas, I'll just say it, like onto the rest of humanity is really scary. And so it was in this season when I actually found Bitcoin, and I realized this is like a way to have a peaceful protest against this kind of governance. And it brought me so much hope. And so, yeah, it's like this meditation is all about the idea that, like, even though, like, because my hope for Bitcoin my hope for the world started before I had like much Bitcoin at all, like, and before I even knew what Bitcoin would become. Like, this is like Bitcoin's like, I can't remember what the number was, maybe in the 20,000s, the $30,000 range. But my hope, once I discovered what Bitcoin was, my hope was like latched on, and it utterly changed my demeanor. And there's just so many benefits when you're living in an attitude of hope as opposed to when you're living in an attitude of fear. And it just totally changed who I am as a person. And I was able to sleep at night again, which was saying something. And so it brought profound changes. And this is where it harkens to what Christ has done in our lives, because Christ has changed my life, but there's still so much change that is yet to come. Like, he's entered into me by the Holy Spirit, and he's forgiven me of my sins. And yet so much of the realization of what Christ is doing and will do is still something that's future oriented. It will happen later on. In the same way that I have hope in Bitcoin now, and yet my stack is still relatively small compared to many other people. In the same way, like my hope in Christ, my stack is small, but I know what it will become, and so I have that hope, and that changes who I am today, and that's kind of the heart behind this. So, yes, I do think Bitcoin is a part of God's plan to bring justice and equity in the world, and I've already seen that happen on an individual level because I'm a recipient of that.
Well, you're not far from the kingdom. We'll open you with welcome arms. Mill camp.
Sounds good.
Yeah, at least mill, maybe post mill.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Meditation 6. This is, I think, one of Jordan's, but it talks about Bitcoin honoring natural law. And then it goes on to say that the law of grace is a deeper magic. So we're getting back to a C.S. Lewis quote. It's a reference to Aslan's sacrifice in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And that the law of grace is a more powerful law than the natural law. So could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, the idea there again is we need to follow God's law. We must follow the natural law, or whatever book you mentioned. We need to follow the order of the universe in order to thrive. Like, if you don't look both ways before you cross the street, you risk getting hit by a car. There's just nothing you can defy and try to defy reality, but like, it's there, right? And so it's. Yeah. So some things in this book draw on similarities between Bitcoin and Christianity, but other things show more of a contrast. And so what we get into in this chapter is that, yes, we need to submit ourselves to natural law, but then then later in the chapter or in the meditation, it just brings the stark reality that we actually have all fallen short of this law. We've all fallen short of God's law. And so we've screwed things up. And, when we think of like, Bitcoiners are, pound the table and say, we need equal weights and measures, like, false weights and measures are an abomination before the Lord. And yet we are all guilty of that. We've all done that in different ways, whether it's through, and we get into this in chapter 7, but taking out like mortgages and stuff like that. We've all kind of manipulated the money supply, but we've all not just on the monetary front, but we've all screwed up in our personal lives in multiple ways. And so the natural consequence for us is if you reap what you sow. The Bible says if you sow sin, the result is death. And so the natural outflow of what we do in our lives, we're going to suffer death. That's the consequence. And yet we are in need of a higher law. So I love that part of the story where Aslan talks about, when he resurrects from the dead, and he says, like, there's actually a deeper magic that the witch didn't understand. And in the same way, there's the natural law that we will reap what we sow. But thank God there is a deeper magic out there, and it's called the law of grace. And that is that we, even though we reap what we sow, Jesus took the penalty for us and now gives us freedom because of what he did for us, rather than us facing the consequences ourselves. And so that's the heart behind it.
I think that goes back to the original question of why do Bitcoiners seem to be open to finding Jesus, right? It's Fiat maxis, when they sort of come to terms with the fact that Bitcoin is shining a light on natural law, and they can't ignore it, as seen in the number go up, which can be somewhat embarrassing to governments because it exposes what they're doing with the money printing. Then the next logical step is, well, if we've already gone from fiat down to natural law, then what's beneath natural law? And you get kind of to the bedrock where it's like, well, it's the law of grace. It comes from your creator.
Yeah.
Okay. You talked about the mortgage stuff. Meditation 7, reflecting on Jimmy Song's controversial claim at Bitcoin 21 in Miami. He stated that we're all culpable for inflation because when we take out loans on things like houses and cars, we increase the money supply, which is true. You point out that this is the common man's way to use the Cantillon effect in his favor. Can you define the Cantillon effect for those who haven't heard of it, and then help us understand if there's a moral imperative here for Christians?
Yeah, I remember watching this live, Jimmy Song live on YouTube, and you could hear a pin drop when he said this. He's like, "You were all guilty, like we are all culpable," and there's like this awkward, like what is like one guy like started cheering like really awkwardly. Anyways, I really encourage people to go listen to that moment because it's like, ooh, like you could tell like he hit a soft spot, and it. Yeah, I had to reflect on it as well. And so that's where this chapter comes from. But yeah, Cantillon effect is basically a way of describing how new money that comes into the system doesn't benefit everyone equally. Those who receive it first gain the most, and then it kind of trickles down. And so the vast majority of new money that's coming into the system goes through the central banks. And I don't understand the plumbing of the financial order too much, but I know it's like central banks, large businesses, and kind of down, it goes down the pipe, right? And then your average person on the street is usually the last to receive something, whether it's a stimulus check or whatever it is. And so, your question is, should
as Christians, do we have a moral imperative to not take out loans?
Yeah. I mean, even this is a hard one because even Dave Ramsey recommends using a 15-year mortgage. I mean, he's probably having a heart attack when they talk about 50-year mortgages in the U.S. now. But I think I saw Babylon Bee post on that yesterday that he's on life support right now. But I think I don't. Here's the thing: we've created this structure in our world that you kind of have to play the game. Otherwise, you're going to be living in squalor. Like, I don't know how else to do it. Like, I don't know how anyone, like I live in Canada and the housing prices are just insane. Like compared to the average salaries of a person. What does it take? It takes a couple. They're both working full time today. It's like something like 5 years at least to raise enough money to afford a home. Actually, sorry, that was a US quote. That was from my buddy Daniel. But yeah, it must be even more in Canada because our home prices are astronomical. I know it's the same in like Australia and stuff. And so you can't, it's a hard one. You can't get ahead without playing the game, but at the same time, you probably don't want to do it too much because of you're kind of like drawing from the common coffers when you do it, and you're benefiting yourself at the expense of other people, even though it's just a tiny bit to other people. Like the biggest sinners in this area is the central bankers, there and the government. Like you taking out a mortgage is it's a pea-size amount in an ocean full of debt that is mostly government spending. And so, I'm on the fence with this one, honestly, because like I want to encourage people to survive within the system that we have. And this gives me hope, like when I see Bitcoin coming down the pipe. Like I think advocating for Bitcoin is a hopeful thing that can even the playing field for people who can't get into like mortgages. They can't afford a home. They can buy a more pristine asset through Bitcoin, and so it kind of helps even the field. And so my hope. Full confession, I have a mortgage. And so like I'm a sinner in this regard, but at the same time, like maybe my advocacy for Bitcoin will help even it out. Not that like, we're saved by grace and not through our works, but I don't know. All that to say, I'm torn.
I definitely think this is a tricky one. I mean, if we lived in a society where it was just, everybody sold their firstborn child or something to make extra money. And so it's like, well, everybody's doing it. So, I mean, obviously in that case, it's like as Christians, we're not going to sell our firstborn child.
Right.
This one's a little bit more of a gray area. I think that we can all try to not use debt as much as possible, especially like unsecured credit card debt or something like that. Getting a loan against your house, I don't know, especially if you have the cash to buy the house and you're taking a loan and you're putting the cash in Bitcoin and thereby getting society to a sound money standard faster than it otherwise would by voting your dollars for the Bitcoin. I think there's a case to be made, but you got to be careful, obviously, because in that case, you're kind of arguing the ends justify the means. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
Be careful is probably what I would say too.
I mean, the other side of this is that a lot of people took on mortgages before they even realized it, right? And so it's like one of those questions of, well, what do you do if you convert to Christianity after you get married and now your spouse is still an unbeliever? I think it's pretty clear that you don't get divorced. You try to live with them and you try to love them and you try to show them the gospel and you try to show them God's grace. And I don't think the Bible is like, oh, sorry, you made a sinful decision and now you get a get out of jail free card. It's kind of like, no, you got to live with your decision. So,
I don't know.
It's
a tough one.
Well, maybe we can have Jimmy on and he can defend himself on that one.
Yeah, he'll put us all in our place.
Yeah.
The conviction's already starting here, Jim. I'm just like...
All right, we've finally made it to meditation 8. We've been beating around this bush.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. In the 8th meditation, you quote Peter Thiel's preface to the Sovereign Individual, where he makes the analogy, quote, if AI is communist, crypto is libertarian. Then you say, Bitcoin counterbalances centralized AI, surveillance, and control over our finances. This is a hopeful take, but others like Michael Saylor believe that Bitcoin will be the currency of choice for AI. Do you view AI as a threat or even another potential Tower of Babel? And if so, do you think Bitcoin is deterring or promoting this threat?
I think AI is a very powerful tool that can easily become be centralized or be used by governments for pernicious reasons. Like and so I think China's just a great example of this. And having lived there for a while, there are a lot of positives from it. And I'm trying to be gracious and steelman the argument because there's a lot less crime in China that I noticed than in North America. In many ways, it's a fairly harmonious society, but there's a lot less freedom. Like you cannot speak negatively to the government, and they will. If you try to do something that's off, they will catch you. There's a lot less religious liberty as well, and so the things that I value the most, I very strongly value religious liberty, and so that it drastically goes against my worldview of the system that they built, even though they are able to build buildings and subways and amazing structures so much faster than we can in North America. They have all kinds of issues as well. And I think, now that they're using a lot of AI, they can do things even faster, but they can also suppress their people faster and more harshly. And so I do fear, this chapter was written because of the fear of a AI panopticon spreading to Canada and to the US. And I've been really thankful to see, especially in the US, there's been a lot of people standing up, and especially a few years ago, they were really banging on their fists on the table about outlawing CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, which could be used in conjunction with some kind of types of AI surveillance to really restrict what people can buy and sell. And so I'm very hopeful that America's doing its thing, standing on its roots of freedom, and that we won't get that over here, I hope. But I don't understand AI well enough to know what will happen. I do think AI will use Bitcoin, but I don't think the use of Bitcoin will be an issue I think if anything, it'll actually help Bitcoin, because it'll just mean there'll be infinitely more transactions happening infinitely faster. Like it'll if anything accelerate the adoption and the use of Bitcoin, and probably the price of Bitcoin as well, which benefits all of us who own Bitcoin. And so like AI, I don't think can change the hard cap, 21 million. I don't think it can change the difficulty adjustment. Like maybe it's going to be smarter than all of us one day. So who knows? But I don't think it can change those things, because I think those things are rock solid. And so, yeah, I don't think it's a threat.
Yeah, I mean, setting aside the quantum threat, I mean, assuming that AI is the one that solves the quantum threat, and assuming that Satoshi never upgrades his coins to quantum safe addresses, I suppose the AI could have a bit of a windfall there. But if AI is that smart, don't think it would spend it all at once. I think it would try to do it quietly, although I'm sure people are watching those addresses like a hawk, and it would definitely spook people to see Satoshi start moving coins, or who they thought was Satoshi, right? But at the end of the day, when you think about AI coming of age in a fiat world versus a Bitcoin-backed world, I take more solace in the idea that Bitcoin can't be modified by humans, and so therefore it's going to be impossible, or at least really hard, for it to be modified by AI, whereas by definition and by design, fiat can be modified by humans. And so if the governments can print fiat, it'll be just that much more easier for AI to hack in and crack it and do the money printing itself, and give itself all the resources that it needs to do all the nefarious things that the anti-AI people think it will do. Having said that, I generally, my post-millennial sympathies don't really, I don't see a place in the story in the Bible where AI kills us all. It seems to me when Jesus comes back, there's humans. So I don't know. That's not to say it couldn't get bad. Maybe it will kill a lot of humans, but I'm generally more optimistic in my feeling on that. It doesn't really line up with my eschatology. So
yeah. Have you ever read C.S. Lewis's sci-fi series?
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. What's the last book called?
It's called That Hideous Strength.
That Hideous Strength. Yeah. I loved how they put it, because they basically, without knowing what, like C.S. Lewis never saw AI. He never even saw really the computer age, but he kind of almost forecast something like that. And it was, it basically, Christ's return happens right before like things completely go awry. Like it's like they get to the point where there's absolutely no other hope other than divine intervention to save the world. And so I don't know. It's not scripture. It's his like just musings, but
call it fan fiction.
It's fan fiction. It is, but he's coming from a biblical worldview, right? And so he's trying to import what he knows from scriptures into his, generally speaking, into his books. And so I wonder if it's going to end up something like that. There's all these forecasts like about AI 27. Like that's a scary. I don't know if you've read that or seen the presentations, but it's pretty scary. Thinking that AGI. Or not even AGI, but the AI could be used by nefarious actors to create bioweapons, and that could easily wipe out civilization. It's pretty bleak and dark.
I'm fading that stuff pretty hard, so I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, good.
We can do a follow-up podcast in 27 and figure out if I was correct to fade it. So
yeah. Hey, I would love to fade that as well. I'm aspiring post-mill here, so.
We'll have you by the end of the pod.
Sounds good.
All right. Meditation 9. You make the point that unlimited freedom is debilitating. And then you go on to quote Tim Keller, who said, quote, "Freedom is to wholly want what I was built to do." Can you explain Keller's idea of secular negative freedom and why it's debilitating? And then unpack his idea of true freedom in terms of what we were built to do?
Yeah. The basic point here is that freedom requires restraints. True freedom requires restraints. And so you can ask, there's all different ways to showcases, but like who's more free at a piano? Is it that person who has, through discipline and constraints, like become a world-class pianist, or is it a gorilla? Like the world-class pianist is far more free at the piano, and because they have applied those constraints over time and done the hard work, it's proof of work, right? And they've done that over time. They can present just glorious, beautiful music, whereas the gorilla will just smash the thing to pieces and it'll be an absolute mess. This is probably a depiction of like modern art too, right? Like get the gorilla and the piano together, and that's modern art. But yeah, the idea is that true freedom comes from cultivating our desires to what God, cultivating our desires to be aligned with what God wants. It's desires are a weird thing because I was just talking about this with someone today, last night. Like, how do you change what you want? Like, in some sense, you just want what you want. Like, your desires are like you can't choose your desires. But in another sense, you can cultivate your desires, and so you can, if I'm dreaming about owning a certain type of car, I could put a poster of that car on my wall. I can scroll, the internet and Facebook Marketplace, whatever it is, or just look at pictures of that car and check all the aspects of the car and see what's for sale, and that's cultivating my desire for that given thing. And so, in the same way, we can cultivate our desires to actually want what God wants. And when we do that, we align ourselves with this thing that we've been talking about, this kind of like natural law, this God's law. We align ourselves with the more fundamental reason of why we were created. And that is what brings that peace. That's what brings that harmony with our lives. And so, whereas complete freedom is just like freedom utterly without restraint. It's you could do whatever you want. But the problem is, because we live in a world where there's consequences for our actions, it can bring all kinds of problems with that as well. So, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. That's great. All right, meditation 10. You claim that fiat is the Ponzi and it incentivizes debt, whereas Bitcoin stands in contrast as the equity-based system that encourages savings. Most people seem to intuitively feel like Bitcoin is the Ponzi scheme, so this claim is a bit confusing. Can you explain the contrast?
Yeah, for this one, I draw a lot on Jeff Booth. The meditation's called "You Can't Fix the System from Within the System." And so, yeah, like, what are some things we know? So fiat money is debt-based. And because it's debt-based, it needs exponential growth to survive. And then it transfers wealth through inflation. And so, he talks about this. He has an excellent book called The Price of Tomorrow, where he talks about this confluence of like this, how our financial system is set up such that we need debt to survive. We need ever growing debt to survive. And in the way that we are currently structured in the fiat system. And yet at the same time, there's all these deflationary forces that are happening in the growth of technology that are pushing prices down. And so this is why like things like the iPhone have been almost like stagnant in price. You get something far better, but than you did with the iPhone 17 than with the iPhone original. And yet it's almost like around the same price range because Apple has figured out how to make this so much cheaper, so much faster. They've worked through their processes and the technology has made it so much easier to produce this thing. And yet at the same time, so you think it'd be getting cheaper, but at the same time, it's also because of the inflation in the system. Anyways, they've kind of pushed each other back and forth and kind of meeting in the middle. And so,
well, the government conveniently uses products like that in their basket of goods to measure inflation.
Yeah, and they're not really thinking about that one aspect of it, right? That prices. What was Jeff Booth say? Prices revert to the natural
state of the free market is deflation, I think is his kind of famous quote.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's the natural state of the market. And so
I don't know if I would say they aren't thinking about it. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some of them that know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. They just wouldn't want to present that to us, mere mortals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I don't know if that answers the question.
No, yeah, it does. But okay, still in meditation 10, later you make the point that personal transformation requires divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So most people intuitively gravitate to a works-based righteousness. So can you elaborate on the true message of Christianity and how this is unique in the world of religions?
Yeah, working with Power to Change, or if you've seen the track by Crew, there's this little booklet called the Knowing God Personally booklet, and it's got this this visual with God at the top, humans at the bottom, and basically all of religions, like any one of them, are represented in these little arrows of us trying to seek after God, trying to find Him, trying to do enough good works, trying to meditate hard enough, trying to whatever it is that the religion espouses, like do these things, this set of rules, live by this rule set, that you will attain more divinity through that, or you will actually find God through that, and you will please God through that. Whereas Christianity is the other way around. Instead of an arrow pointing up from us to God, Christianity is an arrow pointing down from God to us. It's the only religion in which God actually entered into human form and did the work for us that we couldn't do, and that's the work of Jesus, his life, his death, his resurrection, so that we can be made right before God. It's the Christian message is that we are saved by grace and through faith, and that it's not of ourselves. It's not as a result of good works, but it's by the work of Christ. That it's what He's done, not what we've done. And so we just need to put our faith in Him. We just need to trust Him. And it sounds so simple. And it is, but it again, it's that paradigm shift that we need to go through to actually realize, like, and it's that humble pill that you need to take to realize, actually, I need this. Yeah, you can't do it on your own.
All right, that's as close as we're going to get to an altar call on this podcast. So there you have it. That's the gospel right there.
There we go.
I teed that one up for you. All right, 11th meditation. That. John Piper has this reflection that God is rare, permanent, and accessible. Can you unpack what those qualities mean in the context of God and why it's so important relative to God, or I should say, why it is so important relative to God the Son, Jesus?
Yeah. This is taken from I think this is Jordan's idea to put this in here. Or no, maybe it was, it was Oshawa Hawthorne, our book editor, pointed this out as he was like editing our book, and said, like, you should really consider using this. Rare. God is rare. There's only one of Him. He is scarce. In the same way that Bitcoin is scarce, there's only 21 million, and there'll never be any more. There will never be more than one God. There's just Him. He's permanent. It's similar to like gold, right? He's unchanging. Gold, you can melt down, you could smash it, you can do whatever you want to it. It will still be gold. It doesn't change its form based on whatever external pressures you put on it, unless maybe you're in like throwing it into a black hole or something. But then we get into like some weird quantum theory. But that is permanent. It's unchanging, and God is unchanging. He's the same God yesterday, today, and forever. And then that He's accessible. He's within reach. Bitcoin is something that is accessible to anyone with access to the internet, which is just such a beautiful thing. It's not restricted to, people who are accredited investors, or it's not restricted to people who, have a certain set of wealth or live in a certain country. It's literally anyone can access this thing with an internet, and God is valuable. So this is all reasons why Bitcoin's valuable. This is all reasons why God is valuable. God is valuable because He's within reach. And so I think Piper gives the example of like, if there was, some kind of really rare material that's on a far off, you think of like space mining. Think of like if there's a meteorite out there that has some really rare substance that's very valuable. Because it's not accessible, we can't actually attach a price tag to it, because it's just, given our set of technologies right now, it's beyond our reach. So we would say like it's actually not as valuable as something that's actually within our reach, that is accessible. And so, this is just kind of Piper's musings of why God is actually valuable. And I think these three aspects of God, rare, permanence, and accessibility, just lend to the giving some good reasons why.
Okay, let's move on to meditation 12. This is going to be my Sydney Sweeney getting an apology out of you interview question.
Boy. And by the way, I'll just say, like, in terms of preparing for the podcast, like we've kind of hit the limit of what I've pre-thought. And so This will just all be off the cuff now.
It's just going to get better from here. It's just going to get better from here.
It's going to be raw.
This question is perfectly timed. You're going to give me the Sydney Sweeney look. Okay.
Gosh, okay.
You say that scarcity is what creates value. Later, elaborating that the energy required to mine Bitcoin is what gives it value. On the surface, this sounds like you are agreeing with the socialist theory of value, which states that the value of a commodity is determined by the amount of labor required to produce it. Of course, the Austrian School of Economics contends that all value is subjective and determined at the margins. Can you clarify your ideas on where the value of Bitcoin comes from?
Yeah, okay.
I'm not going to comment on that. I'll comment whenever I have something to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. I see you got a hint on here in the notes. You think maybe that the energy requirement is what enables scarcity. The scarcity makes it possible for something to be subjectively valued at the margin. Not that scarcity creates the value, but is requisite. I don't know what to say, Jim. My head's spinning with this question.
The question is, all joking aside, just because something is scarce, does it mean that people are going to subjectively value it?
Right. So there's only like
there's elements on the periodic table that are totally scarce, but we don't know how to use them. We can't even produce them, and so it's like they don't really have any value, right?
Yeah. Scarcity alone doesn't create value, but I think it goes back to those other two things. Like, is it something that's permanent? Is it accessible? And I mean, and Bitcoin is, I'd maybe talk about it through the lens of like, what are the ideal properties of money, right? And so if you're going into that, I love that bullish case for Bitcoin chart that Vijay Boyapati lays out, where he's got the chart of like fiat, gold, and Bitcoin, and then it's like it runs through all the properties, scarcity, divisibility, fungibility, et cetera, and then he gives like a rating, an A, B, C, D, or F for each one, and you just see that Bitcoin, when it comes to like what is money ideally to be, that Bitcoin fits the bill for so much of those, and scarcity is one of those things that it's really important, because if you don't have scarcity, like you're just gonna, it's like you're trading seashells, and people are coming in from the outside to your island, and oh, they found a lot more seashells in a place where you didn't know where they were, and so they're gonna inflate your system and buy up all your wealth.
I think we'd agree on that. I would say the way I would phrase it is value is predicated on scarcity, but not only scarcity. So
yeah,
another way to think about it would be, can you think of anything in the world that exists that is not scarce that also has value? And, and at least from a commodity standpoint. And the answer is like, no. Then ask yourself the other question. Can you think of scarce things that do have value? And the answer is, yeah, there's scarce things that have value. There's also scarce things that don't have value. And so it's really just, yes, Bitcoin is rare. It's scarce. And we're in this period of time where the jury is out on whether or not people are going to value it. Now, obviously, at the time of this recording, Bitcoin's trading over $100,000 US. So there's at least some amount of people valuing it, and they're valuing it fairly high. But it's relative to the overall ocean of value in the world in terms of just asset classes like bonds and real estate and stocks and things like that. It's quite tiny. And so when you look at it kind of in a pie chart, people are valuing it very little at the moment. And so I guess we have yet to see whether or not that's going to take off. We can all hope it's going to take off, but we have yet to see. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, yeah, the heart behind this meditation number 12 is it's called God's proof of work, and to demonstrate. It builds on where gold derives its value. And the idea that it is scarce, that like, what is it? You can fill all the gold in the world, all the mined gold in the world into like 2 or was it 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools? But it's not that much. It's fairly small amount. But because of that, like this is why gold is ripping right now, because it's scarce. If they were to find like a whole bunch of new gold deposits and actually start mining them, then I'm sure it'll start to go down a bit. But the idea of like, because where this question comes from, how this relates to the kind of in the spiritual realm, because I used to always wonder, like, why did God need to sacrifice Jesus in order to forgive sins? Like, why was the sacrifice necessary? If God can do anything, why can't he just snap his fingers and cause it to go away? And then I realized that if you really look down into it, you need that Jesus' death on the cross is a type of proof of work, similar to how Bitcoin expends a lot of energy to protect it and to create that scarcity. A lot of energy has to be expended. In the same way, Jesus, you could almost view it as like an expense of infinite energy in his death and resurrection that actually causes this like radical transformation and creates the opportunity for people to come to know God now. I go into a lot more details in the chapter, but yeah, that's kind of where it's coming from, that Jesus' sacrifice is the ultimate proof of work.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. All right. We'll move on to meditation 13. This is another one of Jordan's, I think, so you can pass on it if you want. He says that being made in God's image can be understood as a store of value, and then compares humans to transactions lost in a vast mempool where our efforts or transaction fees are inadequate to reach our intended destination. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the chapter's called Child Pays for Parents, and he tells a story about how he sent a Bitcoin transaction one time, and he forgot to set the transaction fee very high. He set it like really low. And so he kept checking back on the transaction, and it's like, a few days later, it didn't go through. A few weeks later, it didn't go through. And he starts to panic, like this Bitcoin's just lost in the mempool and none of the miners are picking it up because the fee is so low that they're not going to make enough from mining it to make it worth mining. And so he called up Jimmy Song and said, Jimmy, what do I do? And then this idea, which is like native to Bitcoin, Jimmy tells him about this thing called child pays for parent. And so you got to do a child pays for parent transaction where you send another transaction to the same address, but put a higher fee on it. And that's the child transaction. And because it's going to the same place, the fee on the child transaction covers the fee for the parent. And so he just thought I mean, you probably don't even need to get into it. Like, what a beautiful display of the gospel written right into the code of Bitcoin, that you can actually do something like this, where, in a sense, we're all lost. Our righteousness isn't great enough to reach God, and so Christ, who is the Son of God, God's child, has a high enough fee, has a high enough righteousness to push us through. Anyways, he just thought that was a beautiful aspect of Bitcoin that he wanted to meditate on. Meditate on through this chapter.
All right. Meditation 14. He talked about the idea of Christian hedonism versus secular hedonism, and how it provides an alternate and clear motivation or driving force compared to stoicism or even objectivism. In the end, Bitcoin hodlers pride themselves on being low time preference, and your call to action is that Christianity is the ultimate low time preference endeavor. Can you walk us through some of these comparisons and help us understand how these concepts, which are seemingly at odds, are exemplified in Christianity?
Yeah, I just think it's such a funny thing, and we see this all over Bitcoin X, where Bitcoiners don't just celebrate number go up; they celebrate number go down. And so, in a sense, they're like you start to wonder, like, man, are these people all masochists? Like, why would they celebrate when it's like they lost 50% of their wealth? And they're like, this is amazing. Like, I could buy cheaper sats. And so it's just a weird thing that they, yeah.
I think it's when your mindset switches from, I'm going to buy Bitcoin and take some profits at some point, to, I'm going to buy Bitcoin and I'm never going back to dollars.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, the ultimate goal for many people is just, I want as much Bitcoin as possible. And if you consider that Bitcoin never changes, then a cheaper dollar amount attached to that Bitcoin is just a great buying opportunity. And so Anyways, yeah, I relate this to the idea of Christians who undergo suffering, because suffering is a given in the Christian life, and in the same way that a Bitcoiner can actually celebrate when their portfolio is dropped by 50% and they get a Sats buying opportunity. In the same way, we can count it joy when we experience different forms of suffering, because we know that it's producing for us an eternal weight of glory on the other end. And so it refines our character. It draws us closer to God. It can actually, and I found personally in my own life, like I've found great joy in seasons where I've been either incredibly sick or experienced some kind of loss, or that God meets you in those points, and it actually grows who you are as a person. And so, anyways, I kind of, this chapter is kind of a play on that those temporary sacrifices can actually lead into huge long-term gains.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Bitcoiners would say, never sell your Bitcoin, right? And maybe they're looking 10 generations out and they want to provide Bitcoin to their children's children. That's all well and good. But at the end of the day, I would say most Bitcoiners are probably going to spend at least some of their Bitcoin on themselves before they die. Whereas Christianity, the vast majority of our existence is going to be in that eternal weight of glory. And so in that sense, you don't really have to spend any of it before you die. You're saving it all up for after you die, which is the ultimate low time preference decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of by default, Christianity gets the trump card on that one. I guess the encouragement I would have for the Bitcoiners is your inclination is correct. Low time preference is better, but there's an even lower time preference movement that you can get involved in here. So
100%.
I'm with you on that one.
100%. Yeah, that's the argument of the chapter.
All right, meditation 15. You say your allocation percentage is the measure of your faith, at least with respect to Bitcoin. The general idea is that most people put faith in many things without even realizing it, and that in the end, faith in Christ brings a profound sense of security and hope, even more than something as great as Bitcoin. Some Bitcoiners get pretty confused about this and even make outrageous claims, like Bitcoin is the second coming. What kind of admonishment or encouragement would you provide to a Bitcoiner that is putting this much faith in Bitcoin over Jesus?
Yeah, I think so. Your level of education, education breeds allocation. Where to the extent to which you understand, the extent to which you your education leads to a deeper trust, and then that deeper trust leads to a deeper allocation. And so in this chapter, we really get into the idea of like, how much do you actually trust Jesus? How much are you if you do trust him, you'll actually, like, in a sense, put your money where your mouth is, in the same way that someone can't say like, oh, I'm a big Bitcoin believer, and then you look at their portfolio and they have like 0% allocation. Like, that's just, I'll show you my faith by what I do rather than what I say. And so someone has to actually have an allocation in order to be trusting in Bitcoin, and to in a sense put their faith in Bitcoin. I don't like that term, and a lot of Bitcoiners probably would get turned off by that, the idea of putting your faith in Bitcoin, but it's like you're trusting Bitcoin, and so it's just same meaning. But what admonishment or encouragement would I provide to someone who's putting too much faith in Bitcoin over Jesus? You got to look at the substance of what you're putting your faith in. We want to be putting our faith in. We want to put our trust in things that are going to last. We want to put our trust in things that are secure. I'm sitting right now in a chair. I'm really thankful that it's not made of like toothpicks, because I'd be on the floor, right? And
you're not diversified. You're not sitting in multiple chairs, though.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm solely on one chair. Crazy to hear that, Jim. But the big issue is like, what's the substance of your faith? What is the substance of your trust? Like, what is the thing? Like, faith is just a synonym for trust, right? So what is the thing that you are actually trusting in? And so the encouragement would be for anyone listening to be like, look into Jesus if you haven't already, and and help build the argument, or not build the argument, but hear the arguments for why he is trustworthy and why there's substantial evidence for his death and his resurrection, and why you should put your faith in him over just your secular humanist views or other religious views. They don't have the same weight. I would say those are more toothpicks and less strong plastic, like what I'm sitting on right now.
All right. Meditation 16. You encourage seekers to show humility in the same way Adam Back showed humility with Bitcoin. That is to say, we all must recognize that there is a God and we aren't him. So first of all, who is Adam, and how does his example show us what true humility looks like?
Yeah, I try to contrast Adam Back with Sam Bankman-Fried. So Adam Back he's one of the guys who's in the original talk form with Satoshi. He's the creator of, I think it's Hashcash.
Hashcash, yeah.
Yeah. And so he's a guy, like a cypherpunk, who was really influential in the creation of Bitcoin. I don't think he's Satoshi himself. Some people would actually say he's Satoshi. But yeah, he's a guy which is so interesting because I feel like he's almost like a contemporary of Satoshi. It's like, imagine seeing your best friend come up with a world-changing idea and executing it, and you actually were kind of a part of that process. What would you do if you saw that? If your friend created this, let's say a company that became like a multi-billion-dollar company, like what would you? Like he took a multi-billion-dollar idea and turned it into a company. What would you do? Would you create a rival company with the same idea, or would you go and talk to your friend and adopt into that business? And what Adam ultimately did is he saw Bitcoin for what it is and said, "Hey, like Satoshi really perfected the formula here," because the cypherpunks, they were searching for this the best equation, and they were searching for what could be the internet of money for many, many years. And Satoshi found the magic formula and put it together throughout the white paper. And Adam Back, to his credit, was someone who saw that and didn't say, "Oh, this is great, but I can do something better." He said, "Actually, this is great. I'm just going to adopt this and advocate for it." On the contrast, I contrast this to the pride of Sam Bankman-Fried, who's this guy who basically comes along and says, like, "I'm so glad that I'm here to save Bitcoin," and creates FTX and it just starts doing all kinds of really immoral things with siphoning cash through Alameda and all those things. And so he was someone who came along and basically saw Bitcoin and said, like, that's fine, but I'm going to do something better. I'm going to do my own thing. And that thing ultimately collapsed on him. And it's the same way when we see Jesus. Like, are you going to adopt Jesus as it is? Or even when you read the Bible, like, are you willing to submit yourself to reading the Bible for what it is and what it says? Because there are things that it will say that will convict you and that will show you that you're actually wrong in many areas of your life. Are you willing to submit yourself to those things and come under its authority, in a sense, in the same way Adam Back came under the authority, so to speak, of Bitcoin? Or are you going to be your own, like, rogue pilot and try to be like, okay, that's nice, but I'm going to go create and do my own thing? And so, it's like you said, it's a humility test. Adam Back, I start the quote with Matt Odell, "Stay humble, stack sats." And so I love that humility is one of the core values of Bitcoiners. And I think that if you have true humility, then it will lead you to the most humble person who's ever lived, and that's Jesus. And so we're trying to compel people to look into his life.
Well, we have a new podcast episode coming out. We haven't released yet, but it's called "Have Fun Staying Humble." So it kind of riffs on some of that stuff you're talking about. So
nice.
Totally agree.
Nice.
Meditation 17. You highlight 3 sobering realities from the book of Ecclesiastes: the relentless march of time, that death is all-consuming, and the harsh element of randomness. What is the wisdom behind these realities, and how should it help Bitcoiners better prepare for the moon?
Yeah, I think this is... I wrote this meditation to warn people of the dangers of wealth, and also just to kind of like have some sobriety when it comes to Bitcoin, knowing that you could have Bitcoin, you could have all the Bitcoin you want and still get cancer. You could have all the Bitcoin you want and still suffer the loss of a child. That life is harsh, and it's kind of like just meant to be a sobering reality check into that we're all going to face our inevitable death. That death is all consuming. Time is relentless; it'll keep coming, and that all kinds of random things can happen. So you never know when you're going to go, and so it's kind of just we can get stuck in the Moon Boy optimistic framework a bit too long sometimes, and just think like, oh, I can't wait till I'm super rich and I can buy that yacht or that Lamborghini or whatever it is, or and maybe it's more sensible things like, I could pay for my kids' tuition, I can get that new house or whatever it is. But this is just meant to kind of inject a bit of sobering reality into people's thoughts. And as much as it's nice to dream about Bitcoin going to the moon, that we need to take that in stride with knowing that that reality is harsh, and that there will be a lot of things that can come upon us that will throw us for a loop. And so the ultimate purpose of Ecclesiastes, or the ultimate, like, what was he like, the teaching that he leaves his people with, as the author says, is just fear God and keep his commandments, fear God and enjoy life. And so I remember actually, I don't know if you were there, Jim, but your buddy Tim, he gave a talk on why, this is at Thank God for Bitcoin 2022, maybe 3, where he gave a talk on kind of the dangers of too much low time preference, that if you're always putting off for the future, like those things that you could be enjoying today, it's actually a problem. And so I really love that philosophy, and this kind of gets into there into what he's saying as well, that we need to also like take time to enjoy life. Like, why not spend a bit of that Bitcoin and treat your wife to an amazing vacation, or treat your kids, or give generously to people who are doing good work in some kind of nonprofit. There's so many different ways that we can spend our money that will bring joy to our lives and to the people around us, that we don't want to be so low time preference that we become stingy. And so, because we don't know if we have tomorrow. So that's the heart behind it.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think the Lord calls us to do both. So,
yeah, it's one of those things you hold in both hands, right?
Yep. All right. Meditation 18. You say that some suggest that Bitcoin will save society while Jesus saves the soul. Why is this view incomplete?
Yeah, I've seen that from a few people, that that Bitcoin will save society, that it will just make its rounds. It'll make what ultimately Bitcoin does is it aligns incentives and creates a way to transact freely and creates a better store of value. So I think like
fix the money, fix the world.
Yeah, fix the money, fix the world. Yeah. It creates this capitalistic model that really actually works because it's actually capitalism and that kind of thing. And so, but like, I mean, the heart here is that it doesn't fix the human heart. I read this book many years ago, but it's by a guy called Loren Cunningham, and he wrote a book called the Book That Transforms Nations, is what it is. And he lays out, so he's the founder of YWAM, if any of your listeners are familiar with YWAM, Youth with a Mission. And he's one of those unique people who, over the course of his life, before he wrote the book, actually traveled to every single nation on earth, like all 200 plus nations. And he started to view, like, he created within him this really robust view of the world and how cultures form and what influences cultures. And he was specifically looking for like, how does Scripture, how does God change a culture to make it so that it lends towards more human flourishing and more prosperity, just better lives for people in general. And so he says that there's 4 things that lend towards this. And so a society has to have 4 things. One is a biblical view of God. One is a biblical view of humanity. One is the knowledge that truth exists and actually can be known. And the last is that we are responsible for living according to the truth. it's all back to that thing. Like if you're living according to God's law, if you're living according to natural law, it leads to human flourishing. And so, yeah, having the view that Bitcoin's going to do all like the societal change, and then Jesus will just save our soul so we can get to heaven one day is really incomplete. I agree with Lauren Cunningham in that we actually we need to be transformed in our character today, and we need our society to be transformed in its character, and that will come through these four things, like having a biblical view of humanity, a biblical view of God, and that will actually lend to the societal change that we are hoping for. And I think Bitcoin is a big piece of that. And so I don't think it's just like it's either the Bible or Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin can the greatest society that I can possibly imagine is one that lives according to a lot of these like a biblical worldview. I even feel strange saying biblical worldview because there's so many different worldviews potentially on the Bible. People will say they have a biblical worldview, but they'll be differing in opinion. And so, but something that adopts like God's rules for life and that adopts Bitcoin at the center, I think that's where you can really get some amazing societal transformation.
I think this is a really left-brain kind of way to look at the world. It's like there's the physical and the rational and the things that we can explain and run experiments on, have political systems and economic systems. Bitcoin solves all those things. And there's sort of the touchy-feely, mystical, heart, kind of soul, consciousness questions that philosophers try to answer. And those are just two separate things that can never really be integrated. And I would say the more right-brained view of it would be that there isn't really a difference between society and the soul. It's all wrapped up together, and you can't arbitrarily separate them. And at the end of the day, you can't really look at, quote, two separate solutions to something that ultimately isn't two separate things. So if you want to know more on that one, definitely go back and read that book I referenced earlier, Against the Machine. He does a pretty great job at kind of laying that out. So I'd love to get your take on that one too. We'll have to do a follow-up episode where we talk about that book.
Sounds good.
Okay. Home stretch here. Meditation 19. You mentioned the story of Genesis 23, where Abraham buys a burial plot for Sarah from the Hittites, and then you compare it to the Bitcoin network, calling it your Bible orange pill moment. Can you elaborate on this story a bit and talk about how in some ways Bitcoin is unique, while in other ways it's just a new expression of how humans have transacted for thousands of years?
Yeah, I love sharing this story because we talk about like the epiphany that comes with Bitcoin. This was my moment when I had the epiphany. So it was towards the end of 2020, and I had just seen so many weird things happen in society. Like in Canada, the average home price went up in value at the same rate to the same amount as the average annual salary in Canada. So basically, you could either sit on an asset and earn like $50,000+, or you could work your butt off for an entire year and earn the same amount. And I just thought there's something really weird happening with this. And so I went down the rabbit hole of like gold initially, and then Bitcoin. But there's this nagging feeling in the back of my head, like, what if Bitcoin is just a fad? Like, what if this, it's been around for like 10 years or so? Like, what if it's just gonna, go away? It's too new. There's nothing really revolutionary about it that maybe won't have the longevity. And then I was reading in Genesis 23 here, story of Abraham. He's buying a burial plot for his late wife, Sarah, and he's brokering a transaction. And as I read this, it kind of just dawned on me, like, oh man, like it's something I'd never noticed before. But if you look in detail, like how the transaction actually happens, so it's Abraham on one side and it's this other guy, I can't remember his name, on the other, but it's the guy who's selling him the piece of property. And what's happening is they're standing in the city gates, and all the elders of the city are kind of standing around watching this transaction occur. And so Abraham, they each speak, right? Abraham says, okay, I'm buying this plot of land from you for 30 shekels of silver. And the other guy's like, yes, I'm giving it to you for 30 shekels of silver. But he doesn't like give him, like, there's no deed transferred. There's no lawyer present to sign off anything. He just like, they make the statements and he gives him the silver. And like, that is it. That's the only thing that happens. And what validates that transaction happening is that all the elders saw it happen, which is crazy because this is like 4,000 years ago or something that this transaction happened. And it made me think, like, this is basically an ancient version of Bitcoin. Bitcoin, what validates a transaction is that all the nodes see it happen and make the same record. We all have a same, it's a global ledger, right? Like, we all have the same ledger of what transaction have happened. And the only way to overthrow that ledger is something we call a 51% attack. And so you'd have to have like 50% of the nodes or like the mining power. I won't get into the details, but basically you have to overthrow it with more power than is in the system that is like keeping it. And so for example, you'd have to have more than 50% of the elders, if going back to the Abraham, him buying this burial plot, you'd have to have more than 50% of the elders become corrupt and actually start saying, no, actually, Abraham didn't make that transaction. He doesn't own the land. But as long as there's at least 50% of them or more that are truthful and actually, because they saw it, then that legitimizes the transaction. So Abraham owns the land, it's official, and yeah, that's what legitimizes the transaction. So anyways, all I have to say is when I saw that happen, when I read Genesis 23 in that light, in the light of understanding my then understanding of Bitcoin, I just thought, holy cow, like Bitcoin is just a modern version of a system that has been run for thousands of years. It's just this ledger system that's been modernized and digitized. And so that put to rest the idea that Bitcoin is just a fad that could just like disappear overnight. There's maybe other hoops that I had to jump through as well, but that was really an epiphany for me. And I remember making my first Bitcoin purchase very soon after that moment.
I thought that was a great analogy. Loved it. Meditation 20. You say that when you possess knowledge the world has yet to grasp, it is transformative. Selling your car or house to fund a Bitcoin purchase might seem irrational to outsiders, but it feels like no sacrifice to you. How does this compare to your experience with Christianity?
Yeah. This chapter is all about when was it? It's sorry, I'm looking here. Yeah, to whom else shall we go? It's called. There's a moment in it's the Gospel of John where a lot of Jesus' so-called disciples were following him, and then Jesus starts to make some like pretty wild claims about himself, and a lot of people are like, no, like I'm not doing this anymore, and they peace out. And so he lost a ton of followers, and Peter and his core disciples stick around and chat with Jesus after all these people have left, and Jesus looks at them and says, do you want to go too? And they said, no, Lord, like to whom else would we go? Like, you have the words of eternal life. And so all I have to say is they recognized who Jesus really is and thought that he was more valuable than anything else. And in the same way, once you discover Bitcoin, it's hard to think of like I keep thinking like, there's the knots and Core 30 debate going on right now. And I keep thinking like, oh, should I maybe pull some of my Bitcoin and like diversify it just in case something goes south? But I keep thinking like, what else would I put it in? Like I know that there's so many other issues with any other asset that I would want to store my hard-earned money in, the far surpass holding it in Bitcoin. And so I just think like the phrase like, to whom else should I go? To what else should I go? Just really resonated with me, both in terms of in terms of Bitcoin, but then with Jesus. Like I've had moments in my life where I've gone through like what they call dark nights of the soul, and started to think through, like is this really the truth? Is this really what I want to stick with? And then it's really dawned on me, I not that I feel trapped, but like, to whom else would I go? Like I've experienced such richness through Christ. I've experienced like the Holy Spirit. I've experienced him speak to me through his word. I've experienced just countless blessings. It could go on and on, but I've experienced so much through him that I can't imagine disowning him and going elsewhere, or even diversifying a little bit to adopt a little bit of a Buddhist mindset on the side or something like that. Like I can't even imagine doing that because he has the words of eternal life, and they've spoken so strongly to me, and he's changed who I am.
Is that a reference to Ruth talking to Naomi on the whom else should I go to kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's in John 6, I believe. The disciples say it, but yeah, there's something
Well,
like
they're
that.
saying it to Jesus in that
They're
context.
saying
Yeah,
it to
but
Jesus.
Ruth says
Yeah.
it too, right? Because Naomi's like, "Hey, I'm go home to your people," and Ruth's like, "Who else am I going to go to? Your God
Yeah.
is my God," right?
Yes. Yeah, and she
Yeah.
binds herself to Ruth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Okay. Bringing it home. Meditation 21 million Bitcoin, 21 meditations.
There we
So
go.
this is your call to action where your
Yes.
message to Bitcoiners is to get off zero in their relationship with Christ. You believe that Bitcoiners are a clear-cut fulcrum with which to move the world. Why do you believe that? What is your best advice or encouragement to Bitcoiners looking to get off zero with respect to Jesus?
Yeah. Yeah. As we've talked about already throughout this interview, I think Bitcoiners are in a very unique position where they understand something that most of the world has yet to comprehend, and that it will benefit them tremendously in the years to come if they can hodl. And so I think they will be the real movers and shakers in the coming world because of their profound wealth and influence. My best advice to them, if they want to get off zero with Jesus, probably step one would just be to talk to him. He's there in the room with you. Like, he's here now. Talk to him, pray. Second step, pick up a Bible and start reading it. You could read from anywhere. You could start from Genesis, from the very beginning. That'd be valuable. Another place that some people find valuable is by starting in the Gospels. So you could start with the Gospel of Matthew, or the Gospel of John is often highly recommended. And then check out a church. It's the same things that most people would already know this. Like they're maybe listening to this podcast, but to get off zero with respect to Jesus is just to pursue him in much of the similar ways that Christians have been pursuing Jesus for the last 2,000 years. Go to church, get with people who believe in who he is, submit yourselves to the teaching of his word. Now that we live in a literate society, that's through the Bible, but it's also really beneficial to do that with other people in a Bible study group or in a church context on a Sunday. You really want to probably narrow down like what type of church to go to. There's a lot of churches out there, but you really want to find one that preaches the scriptures just holistically and doesn't like shy away from some of its teachings, because it does say some hard truths, and we want to be subjecting ourselves to hard truths. And then talk to God regularly. Like he'll listen and see what happens. Just I would say, like, test him out. Try talking to God. Try reading the Bible, every day for a week, and see what happens. See what maybe even keep a journal with you and write down, like, what are your thoughts? How did you walk into this? What skepticisms do you have? And just write those all down and see how your mindset shifts after the course of even just a week. And so, yeah. And if you're a Bitcoiner, get plugged into communities through Magnalia and through Thank God for Bitcoin. And there's lots of Christian Bitcoiners that you can talk to as well.
Well, now that you're done shilling me, I will shill you. If you've made it this far, dear listener, please go and buy The Gospel According to Bitcoin. If you haven't already, get off zero with respect to the book. And if you have bought the book and read the book, please go leave a review on Amazon or wherever it is that you bought it. That really does help. Dan, did you want to say any final words?
Yeah, I would echo that one. We're I think at like 10 or 11 reviews, so we would love some more reviews. That'd be really helpful for us. But yeah, thank you so much, Jim, for giving me the space to shill this book. And it was a labor of love by Jordan and I. And we're just, I meet people every once in a while, maybe every like few weeks. I'll get word on someone who's read the book, and it's for a lot of people, it's been really transformative in their lives. And so I just get really encouraged by it. I know the growth is, or the book hasn't had a wide reach, but I believe it's had a deep reach. And so I'm grateful for that. But I would love to get it in the hands of more Bitcoiners, people who are really seeking. And I think we're in a moment right now where a lot of people are spiritually hungry. So yeah, if you want, buy a copy for a friend. If you need a discount or something, maybe try to reach out to me or Jordan. I don't know if we could do anything. That's Jordan's responsibility, but maybe we could get you a package deal or something.
All right. Thanks for taking the time to write the book, and thanks for taking the time to come on the podcast. We'll talk to you later.